welcome to
Yeah.
another episode of Sheroes of Science, where we engage with change makers and system thinkers who are shaping the future of learning, equity, and opportunity. Today, we are diving into a critical conversation. How can we build a robust, inclusive ecosystem where women not only enter, but truly thrive in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that is STEM? Despite the presence of exceptional talent, women in STEM remain underrepresented in leadership and under-recognized in the institutional frameworks. However, the tide is beginning to turn. For instance, over the past few years, more than 2,000 women scientists have benefited from the Wise Kiran, Vidushi, and many government schemes that support career re-entry, postdoctoral fellowships, and capacity building for women in science. While discussions about representations in STEM are not new, today's episode uses a different lens. We are zooming out to ask how are policies actually framed? What is a policy? What does an enabling ecosystem look like across schools, higher education, and workplaces? In our earlier episodes, we did get some perspectives from women scientists and school educators and leaders. So today we will focus more on the role that bureaucracies, interministerial coordination, and social norms can play in either enabling or constraining this vision. To address these questions, we have a very distinguished guest with us, Ms. Meenakshi Datta Ghosh. It is an honor for me to welcome you. She's an accomplished and independent development professional with expertise at the intersection of governance, public health, and public policy. As a former Secretary, Government of India, Ministry of Panchayati Raj, and Special Secretary, Ministry of Health, she walked the talk, specifically with her contribution to public policy. As principal author, National Population Policy 2000, she introduced the copper tea and the emergency morning after pill for women free of cost in the National Welfare Program in 2001, which continues to this day. These two interventions contributed significantly towards reducing population growth in a large majority of states across India and reversed the onslaught on female sterilization. Ms. Ghosh is the principal author of the National Action Plan for Blood Safety 2003, which introduced safe blood storage units across India's frontline health services, which address the requirement of safe blood in emergency obstetric care, as well as in the numerous road accidents. This National Action Plan for Blood Safety also introduced revelation of HIV status to the blood donor not attempted in India till then. As Director General, National AIDS Control Organization, Ms. Ghosh introduced antiretroviral treatment for HIV/AIDS in India on 1st April 2004, which brought Bill Clinton and Bill Gates into India as partners of the National AIDS Control Organization. Thank you, ma'am, once again for joining
Yeah.
us. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Kalyan Chakravarthy, a senior public administrator with a rare blend of academic distinction and deep-rooted experience in governance. An alumnus of IIT and IIM, he further expanded his learning with a degree in law and PhD in management, demonstrating his lifelong dedication to knowledge and public service. Throughout his career, Dr. Chakravarthy has held key leadership roles across a wide range of sectors, including land administration, agriculture, dairy, irrigation, fisheries, social welfare, public works, elections, and law and order. He has served as sub-collector, district collector, secretary to several departments, as well as project director for World Bank assisted initiatives. Now guiding the departments of education, skill development, cooperation, labor, and culture, Dr. Chakravarthy remains committed to building responsive systems through collaboration and insight. With a philosophy rooted in action, either finding a solution or creating one together, he continues to shape the narrative of development with purpose and vision. So thank you so much for joining. So we start our conversation as by understanding public policy. So
Yeah.
when we talk about building and enabling ecosystem for women in STEM, policy is often cited as a key lever.
Mm.
But can you help us unpack what really constitutes
Yeah.
policy in this context and how are such policies typically framed within the government system?
Policy is a long term government or institutional commitment uh, to a goal. It sets the principles, it sets the direction, and it also earmarks the priorities for action. The purpose of policy invariably is to create an enabling environment. And unless you have this larger framework of a policy, then one tends to move here and there without a compass. Typically, whether it's a national policy or it's an institutional policy, policy in itself and by itself does not involve direct action. It simply guides programs and projects which follow from the policy. Now, in the context of this dialogue today, we can take the National Education Policy 2020 as the overarching policy because particularly that policy recognizes gender gaps. It also recognizes the urgent and immediate need for gender inclusion and therefore promotes gender inclusion through the various clauses of that policy. That policy provides a number of programs. What is a program? A program is the operational vehicle set of structured interventions designed to implement the policy, designed to translate the policy into action across multiple locations and into multiple segments of populations. You mentioned, Kiran, knowledge for advancement of women and certainly targeted at bringing women back into STEM, into the workforce. So Kiran may be a program, but then it includes sub schemes which are like women in science and engineering, because these sub schemes will actually provide the fellowships, they will actually provide the funding for R&D, and so on and so forth. And when we come to the project is actually a specific, targeted, sometimes location specific, time bound activity. It defines tangible and measurable outputs and outcomes. For example, you could have in uh, a state like Orissa a summer camp for girls, rural girls, and this summer camp could be funded under the program called Kiran or under the program called Women of Science. Essentially, we are talking about policy, program, and project in the context of STEMinism, which is attempting to bring more women into science. And I think for this purposes of this dialogue, let us introduce this word, STEMinism.
I love it. And thank you for explaining so beautifully
Yeah,
and the differences, and then
yeah,
how action is required and
yeah.
how, under those, by giving examples, relevant examples, you explained it so beautifully. So I wanted to understand from you, from your experience, how do you move from identifying a challenge, say like underrepresentation of women in STEM, to actually crafting a policy that responds meaningfully? And ma'am has given us few examples. I would also want you to highlight a policy or initiative, global or national, that you believe has made a real difference. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Basically, I think there has always been a stereotype that women are better off in job roles which are related to art and STEM related logic or rationality related subjects are not their forte. And I think this myth and this stereotype that we have cultivated over a period of time has largely been debunked by the results shown by women in various fields, especially in engineering. So in fact, if I recall, when I was studying in IIT, the number of women in IIT used to be much less. Like, there would be one hostel compared to, like, so many hostels for the boys. The girls would be very less in the IITs. So also in the IIMs, I would find very less number of girls. So somehow, the concept that girls are not into STEM has been a stereotype. And I think it was my perception, this is my view. It was unfortunately, like, across the world, a sort of a traditional kind of a thought process, that, women probably won't fit into hard roles of engineering, hard roles of science, and which require more, rationality, logic. That has, of course, been, as I said, today we find that most of the toppers of engineering, whether it's NEET or engineering or doctors or medicine or even scientists, are more of women. Now, the policies that would probably change it, in fact, in the state of Assam, uh, I can see that, as they say, that we truly believed that the change, if there is a change that needs to be done in society, the society can be changed by women, and especially girls and women, because, in a sense, they represent not themselves, but they represent a family. They represent a unit. They represent a sort of a generation by themselves. Women, to a large extent, are also, take responsibility for the children, for the family. And perhaps this is the right stereotype, in the sense they take more responsibility, and therefore, like, research has proven that women educated contribute much more to society than a man educated. And a woman's modernity, rationality changes society much more than the change that can be done by a man. And therefore, taking this research and this background into account, the government of Assam, for example, provides for, like, if a girl if she does well and she gets first class, they get a scooty, or, something by which they can travel to college. So there is a incentive for girls to do well in their class 10. There is a incentive for girls to do well even in class 8, by providing them bicycles. There are scholarships if the girls continue their education into graduation. That is the GER ratio, the graduate enrollment ratio for girls. So Assam also had a issue that most of the education in the colleges was arts education and not science education. So when was the principal secretary education, and when I found this fact that in south of India, most of the students are into science, and arts is extremely in the case of Assam, we will see that the number of students taking science itself is very small. So within that number of students who are taking science is very small. We find the girls taking science obviously will be less than the 50% of that 10%. So science education in the state of Assam has been less. Primarily, the reason was there were not too many good teachers in science. We have therefore started getting more and more science teachers. Recruitment of science teachers into schools is one of the things that has started. The skewedness towards art is being slowly reduced by having more number of teachers, and having portions where science education has become necessary. Tying up these schools to IITs, tying up the schools to science colleges is another thing that they are doing. Introducing even in the arts colleges some element of science, as is required in the new education policy, has been a thing. And then coming specially to women, I think, they take to science as much as boys, and perhaps they're much more focused when they're taking to science than as much as boys. And therefore, I don't think that there is anything specially needed to encourage them. It is only making things available to them is the only thing. I don't think that there is a special orientation required to make the women to go towards science. It's just the accessibility and the availability of teachers in order to for them to take up to take up STEM education. That would be that needs to be made, and that is the direction in which the state of Assam is progressing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing, some critical shifts that you have prioritized in the state of Assam. So we suppose we are to have a policy, and you have a program and
Yes.
project
Project.
and
Yeah.
everything defined.
Yeah.
However, what you see could be some less visible but deeply systemic
Oh
barriers
my
that
God. Yeah.
keep
Yeah. Yeah.
women from entering or staying in STEM,
Yes.
because the government has introduced so many policies, but still, we are far away from that vision that where, we have enough women. And so how do we ensure that, this vision that is there, this goal that is set is translated into, reality, and how are these addressed and acknowledged while you shape a policy?
It's a landmine almost of, socio-cultural norms. And now let's talk about it village upwards. There are these, there is your immediate family, then there is the community, then there is the larger village environment. Now, within all these, it's even today in many places unheard of that a girl child will actually want to pursue school, and to what end? So that those socio-cultural norms are uh, attitudes, preferences, this sort of patriarchal mindset is so deeply ingrained that no matter that we have reached the 21st century, we have been, I would say, hopelessly unable to actually dive into these and to separate the strands that bind these attitudes together. For example, I mean, immediately, in order to keep up with the Joneses next door, maybe the girl child by the age of 8 in a village will be sent to school. Then, what the family elders they will cite economic constraints. I can either spend money on getting the girl married, or I can spend on her school education. I can't do both. So that becomes deeply ingrained into the girl child. The fact that, well, how will she go to school? Transportation. Transportation becomes an issue. Co-education becomes an issue. Not having, sufficient restrooms accessible and clean for the girl child, that becomes an issue. Safety concerns, harassment. All of these things are played out to such an extent that gender discrimination is the name of the game, and it begins at home. They will send the boy to school, but they won't send the girl to school. When I used to visit villages, they would say, well, we've also purchased a school bag for the girl, and she can keep her crayons, etc., and she can draw at home, and that's what they do in school anyway. You see? So the whole concept of the girl child going out of the house, socializing, even with other girls, forget, co-ed, environment, that somehow it just doesn't happen. Now we come to a stage where the girl, let's say she's now 15 or something like that. There, it is amazing what I have noticed. The girl is highly, and I'm repeating, highly motivated not to attend college. Because of all this, these attitudes and preferences and the patriarchal mindset, and she sees the patriarchal play out every single day. The head of the family will shout louder than the others. So therefore, she thinks, well, that is the correct way to be done. So she is highly motivated not to attend college, because at the college level, the financial problem becomes even more. The transportation problem becomes, even more. The physical and even, the sexual, harassment, the possibility of that. Nobody can guarantee safe environments anymore. So even you may take your daughter and leave her at the doorstep of the college, but what happens after that, nobody can guarantee. So all these things put together is, are the barriers. And then you have the barriers which has been termed as chutes and ladders. This is in the work environment. Now, there are broader structural and environmental barriers, the kind which doesn't know how to negotiate. She has never been taught how to negotiate all of that. she comes across something like a barrier to hidden knowledge. They pretend to provide tech sakhis or maybe even some degree of mentorship. But then she notices that the men are getting a different kind of mentorship. They are getting different kinds of access to information. Information is power. So she doesn't have the information that they have. There will be, career disruptions. She will get pregnant, so she will take leave. And because of those, career, disruptions, these disproportionately hinder women in pursuing, steady careers. There was an extensive survey done in India in 2021 across 98 institutions, and these were science institutions. And it was found that the proportion of women faculty members across all fields was a mere 17%, the average, ranging from 23% in biology to 8% in engineering. So, the dwindling ratios within the senior faculty positions is very stark. All of this is so unfortunate because it is more than well documented that should we invest in the secondary education of a girl uh, and beyond into STEM, not only will this dramatically reduce child mortality rates, child stunting rates, child marriage rates, but also dramatically increase the earnings of the girl's income and lead immediately to proportionate national growth outcomes. So all this is very well documented, and I'm sure we may shout about this from the rooftops, but there are things which are not happening on the ground. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am, for explaining this in detail. So, what kind of collaboration, whether it is interministerial or intersectoral, is required for creating a truly supportive STEM ecosystem for women, whether it is in education, skill development, science and technology, or in the industry, sir? And you have given some example. Maybe you want to build on that a bit.
Today, the world is increasingly asking for and demanding scientific and technological solutions. Now, that being the case, there is no getting away from intersectoral and interministerial collaboration. No one single office or one single department or one single ministry can actually resolve um, even minimally a problem like attracting, retaining, and pushing women into STEM. And I agree entirely with Kalyan that availability and accessibility is critical, despite the socio-economic barriers in terms of attitudes and preferences. But if something is visible, available, and accessible, that does make a lot of difference. My own experience is that everybody talks about intersectoral, interministerial, but to make it happen is not easy at all. When I was dealing with a world crisis like HIV/AIDS, and I used to tell the UN every UN agency is giving a little bit, a little, some pennies towards the program, what we in India would call pennies. So I would say that it would save my time and it would save yours if all of you pool your funds together and let us know how much is it that you are keeping for your own consultants and how much you're actually giving for the program. That kind of, shall we say, transparency, they're not prepared for. Pooling of funds, oh my God, even across different UN agencies, they will not hear of it. Then we come to intersectoral, interministerial. Interministerial pooling of funds is also not acceptable. Um, when it came to the National Family Welfare Program, as you can understand, there's a role in it for the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, there's a role in it for the Ministry of Education, there's a role in it for the Ministry of Health, and there's a role in it for the Ministry of Social Justice. And even if you have intersectoral and interministerial committees at Government of India levels, uh, it doesn't concern any single ministry sufficiently to hold their attention. You know, So, I mean, I have, come to the conclusion that this kind of intersectoral, interministerial collaboration, it needs an all of government push. First and foremost, I would say we need to reimagine, education. We've got to believe that we need girls and women in STEM. We've got to believe that we want them to begin thinking like innovators and like scientists. We want them to to do some critical thinking. We want them to find solutions. We want them to be part of the solution finding teams, and that it will boost women's, collective earnings. UNICEF has already calculated the cost of inaction. That means if we don't have intersectoral and interministerial collaboration, what is the cost of inaction? And they have said the world over it will take 99.5 years to actually close the gender gap. But to achieve gender parity, the prognosis for India would be much better. But nevertheless, we still need to begin to believe that unless we have an all of government push, this is a goal: getting women into STEM. Make this a national goal. Have a national innovation. System by which this can be done. The same existing ministries, laws, and patterns that we are following need to be tweaked. They can be tweaked. It has been done in the past.
I agree with Madam that see STEM education is absolutely. I mean, definitely one of the pillars for future growth, both economically, it is so essential. Uh, and how do we really go about it? Obviously, like, one is education, and then there's so many government schemes which are there, whether skill based, education based, and like, convergence between various departments to really focus on STEM education is, I think, is a long shot, because even convergence of skilling programs and convergence of what we do under the various ministries to get them together has always been a challenge. In fact, this is a challenge I face on a day-to-day basis. Yesterday, for example, itself, I was trying to get all the departments of the state government which are doing skilling to come together. I mean, it's not just the skill ministry, but various departments which do the skilling and STEM-based skilling. So, and to get them together in a unified manner to share resources and to see that there's no overlap itself is a big challenge. To get the state government and the central government, various departments to come together in a intersectoral manner to focus on education or STEM education, which is absolutely critical for the future of society, especially women's STEM education, is also a very tough challenge, without a doubt. And I have seen most of the convergence modules which are there. I've seen most of the websites which we have created, and they are incomplete. To say the least, they are incomplete, and do not as of today I do not see. There is a huge long road that we need to take in order to bring about convergence and a unified manner in which we can really address it. Now, coming to this gender parity issue that she was talking about, yes, I think, there is a huge amount of gender parity still there, despite the fact that we know that women are better, probably at most stable in terms of taking this education. And the gender parity is essentially because I think still traditionally we think that it's the male child who will be better off at education than girl child. And therefore, the girl child either drops out for various reasons, especially when she approaches 15 years, 16 years. Then they help out in family, etc. And then we have this tradition that they should be married early. So all these things really don't, like, help in the education. So what is the way forward? Let me look at the way forward. Now, that's more important. What I see as a way forward is that women's contribution in and the GDP growth will only be there when there is women's the workforce of women increases, which is now maybe at about, I think, less than 25 30% is the labor workforce of women. Once it reaches 50 or 60, only then probably the GDP will like we have a great chance of the GDP going up. And what is the ray of hope? The ray of hope I see is that if you see self-help groups of women, if you see women small entrepreneurships, they're doing extremely well. The banks are very happy to lend to women groups because there is no NPA or there's no problem with regard to repayment, because these women actually like ensure that their businesses do well. How can businesses do well if the women really understand not just the business, the scientific way of doing business? In the sense they do small things like I've seen women making things, but they're not very scientific about it. And then when you tell them that if you do it scientifically, you will really really increase their income, they're much more clued on. They say, oh, is that so? Economics and science and STEM education, if they're related, then you will see that there will be a greater spread of STEM education among women. At the lower level, we are doing well is because of the self-help groups and women-related entrepreneurial groups which are there across the country, which are actually holding together our economy at the rural level. And introducing girl-child STEM education as through the NEP are two, I think, directions in which we take our country forward. Because, as I said, only when the women workforce and the women in STEM come up will our GDP or really like development take place.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. So I think, Dr. Kalyan, you did give examples of incentivizing individual, students who graduate are given a scooty and, high school and all that. So as we focus on creating enabling institutions, how can public bodies, say like schools, universities, research centers, they be incentivized or supported to kind of retain and promote women in STEM, especially outside our urban centers?
We have to, as I said earlier, we have to reimagine education. I believe that we cannot really have a business as usual approach. It may not work. We will continue another 5 years, another 10 years, in the same manner. Now, I would advocate what Sri Lanka did in 1950, but is continuing to do it today. They just wanted to find a solution for two things. One is how to get people to learn that washing hands is non-negotiable, for basic health. And the second was to pull girls into health related careers. Sri Lanka went to their schools, and in the seventh standard, they pulled girls out of school in class 7 and mainstreamed them into education, development, and training for the nursing profession. It was amazing because immediately, not only did girls get a focus, did the mindset of girls changed, but it immediately several generations of households became immediate, beneficiaries. China, by the way, the OECD has found that the way China does its statistics for education, there is a break after 7 years of education. China wants to see in every village how many children actually availed of the first 7 years of education. And those that are left out are then attended to. Those that are not left out are then handled in a different way. So this is one thing that I would say, should be done because it will shake up the system a bit, and girls will get primacy in planning.
There is one or two things which I have noticed which are extremely important and key. Probably a little controversial, but all the same important. Scientific education for women in some minority groups. That was a huge challenge to me when I was a principal secretary education. I had to take a policy decision with regard to closing down of all madrasas. Not because of any religious nature or something. That was not the intent at all. We tried to shut down both. I mean, whether it was Hindu or Muslim or etc. We thought that this is not really scientific. Children getting into a religious education very early in their life without knowing because of parental pressure, and that's not really what the society wants. They can do it out of choice, maybe when they are more mature. So one of the things was we said no, government will not get into religious education, and therefore we closed it down. I was a part of that decision making in the sense that I sincerely believe that the girls, especially in the minority areas, should learn STEM education. They should be more scientific. And if they are scientific and if they learn STEM education, the difference it makes into that community is huge. So, giving scholarships for STEM education in focused areas, where it is necessary to break that mold. Some of the areas where extreme poverty is there, Saint Tea Garden tribal areas, where girls are generally like go to plucking leaves rather than to get into education. When I talk about STEM, I'm thinking about rational education. It's so critical, so important, and so will make such a huge difference. The value of money put in such certain pockets will make a difference to society, will make a difference to growth and development, and to the general mindset.
I think you just mentioned, and I hear it often. So when you said that boys ask that why not for me? Because very often teachers come back and say that my son is saying or the students are saying, why only girls? So
Hmm.
how do you address that?
My own PhD thesis, I tried to see what is the maximum impact that education and economy, of course, they are hugely related. And I also saw that if you look at any equation, the coefficients of of money put on education to the output in society, the development of society, the coefficient to women's education and girl child education is far superior to any to boy child. I'm saying scientifically. So if you look at science, it makes sense to put money with the girl child. Now, how do you tackle it in terms of society when the boy says, why not me? So the way we have addressed it is, yes, we will definitely do it for the boys. And we did say that, boys who are doing very well will also be provided some incentives if they're very well. But then, since the resources are few, as it is providing education and the resources are few, our priorities for the girl child education and for those for those boys who really excel. So maybe when the resources are more, we will cover them all.
I would say that when you put girls, put them or mainstream them into the STEM education, this is the chance for connecting in school platforms and out of school platforms, connecting these girl children and maybe all children with tech startups, with incubators, with accelerators. So connected to them, and they will begin to feel different, to think different. They will develop networks. I mean, if this is a national goal, that get women into STEM, whichever way you know how to do it, please go ahead and do it. Can we not mandate 50% female representation in all publicly funded STEM programs and fellowships? I mean, what is wrong with having it as a goal? You may not do 50% reservation tomorrow morning, but I am saying begin with that goal. In the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, we began with the goal of having 3 million women elected. This, I believe, would be a bold and powerful statement. Why? One, it is a clear, measurable target for inclusion. Second, it will bring about systemic accountability. The third thing is, and yeah, I mean, I would say this and the next one is the most important one. It will signal serious political will to correct the historical gender imbalances in STEM fields. We are correcting historical, imbalances in all manner of, reservations. So, I mean, why not this one? And if we believe that we have missed out on 50% of our talent, then let's go ahead and do something about it. Finally, it will leverage public funding as an instrument of change. This will influence not only government institutions, and that's the beauty, but also those who depend on government support, For example, universities and research centers, or this answers your earlier question. How do you bring about change in schools and universities and research centers? This is how you will bring about the change. Now, what does this include? And if we begin to look at that, it includes all IITs, all NITs, all public research labs. They will be required to meet a 50% female enrollment and participation quota. For what? For programs, for internships, for scholarships, for faculty recruitment. Let us say within 5 years. I mean, nobody is saying do it tomorrow morning, but keep it as a goal. We need a goal that will disrupt business as usual.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Kalyan, any final kind of thoughts from your end on, or any bold policy shift or mindset shift that you feel?
We're talking about this 50% reservation for women, I think is but natural. And that's got to be horizontal, that is across castes, communities,
Yes,
religions,
of
and
course.
across fields, basically,
Yeah.
whether it's education, whether it's politics, whether it is economics, etc. Final word before we close is that yes, we need a bold policy initiative. First of all, to make STEM education the key cornerstone of education or skilling.
By mandating a 50% quota for women in STEM, what will happen is you create a climate across the public and private sectors. A climate will grow where they will also begin to observe this kind of uh, quota in recruitment, in retention, in promotion, in placement. Otherwise, you notice even in family businesses, women are left out. But if this kind of regulation comes about 3 years down the road, you will find it will be a totally different dialogue.
So thank you, both of you, for being there, for your insightful responses, and more importantly, for continuing to do the work that you do in shaping equitable systems. So, what stood out
Brilliant.
today in today's discussion was that policy is not just about frameworks of, on paper. It is about intent. It is about alignment. It is about the courage to design with empathy and equity at its core. So we've explored how collaborations across ministries, investments in institutional capacity, early engagement with girls, as ma'am had suggested, and educators, families can spark system-wide change. But we've also heard about the invisible levers, the
Mm.
language,
Yeah,
leadership,
yeah,
the implicit bias and
yeah.
cultural norms that need as much attention. So, if we were to build a future where women can lead in science, innovate in technology, and engineer solutions to our most urgent problems, we must go beyond schemes, is what I'm hearing. And we need to walk the talk and we must build those ecosystems. So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us in this vital dialogue. We hope this episode leaves you not just with questions, but with renewed possibility and purpose. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and help make a difference. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead.